Hello again, welcome back to the channel. Glad you could join me. So, I recently read the Harbinger Wars Compendium. It is volume 1, I believe. Now, I am a comic book fan, have been for a long time. Mostly Marvel and Batman. I'm not really into the DC comics on a large scale. Superman's okay. And everything, but Marvel's really got the superheroes that I like the most. So Captain America is one of my favorites. Spider-Man, obviously, two of my very most favorite comic book characters. Can't say that I really approve of what's been done recently with them, but I do like to branch out and read other stuff. Now, I had not really been interested in Bloodshot when I was younger. I mean, I'd seen the comics and it looked kind of cool, but I never really got into it. And it wasn't until the Vin Diesel movie, which was okay, it had its problems, but it was okay, that I actually started thinking about reading more Bloodshot comics. And this one caught my eye. It was a great big fat book. I mean, it's something like that thick. And it delves into Bloodshot's backstory and a bunch of other stuff. But this is not a Bloodshot comic. It's the Harbinger Wars. And it's a crossover in... which is kind of weird to say. It's a crossover because this is not like a Marvel crossover with, say, Valiant Comics or a Marvel DC crossover, which they did have. The Amalgam universe, if you're interested. But this is a crossover with their own comic book characters, which seems odd. Rather than just calling it a world event or something, they are calling it a crossover. Anyway, there is an organization called the Harbinger Foundation, and it is run by a man named Toyo Harada. He's a very old man, but he looks much, much younger than he is because he's using his powers to... I'm not entirely sure if he's just cloaking himself so that he appears younger to those people around him, or if he's actually using his powers to kind of regenerate himself and make himself actually physically youthful. He has a wide array of powers. He was born in Japan, and during World War II, he witnessed the bombing in Hiroshima, and that triggered his psionic powers. Now, in the Harbinger world, people with mental abilities are called psiots. And from that point on, Toyo Harada decided that the world would be a better place if he ran it. He had this perfect vision of the future, and so he started gathering other psionically gifted individuals into his Harbinger Foundation and trying to guide the world in the direction that he determined that it should take. To that end, he recruits a young man named Peter Stanchak. Peter is a bit of a rebel. He does not like authority because he's had a very bad experience with that as he's grown up. And because of that, he eventually rebels against Toyo Harada. Now, where does Bloodshot come in? Bloodshot is the pawn, the tool of a secret government group called Project Rising Spirit. Project Rising Spirit knows about the psiots and is trying to recruit their own army of psiots to, oppose Toyo Harada. And so we end up having this three-way battle between Toyo Harada and his Harbinger Foundation, Project Rising Spirit, and Bloodshot. It actually ends up being a four-way. Because if you know anything about Bloodshot, one of the first things that Bloodshot does is he escapes from Project Rising Spirit. Project Rising Spirit created Bloodshot. He has nanobots that reside inside of him, and they rebuild him constantly. When he is in combat, if he takes a bullet, the nanites will expel the bullet and rebuild his body. So he can take a ton of punishment and come out the other side none the worse for wear. Just might need to eat something. And then we have they end up calling themselves the Renegades. It's Peter Stanchek and his friends. So we have this collision of these kind of four forces, because, as I said, Bloodshot ends up being a force unto himself as he breaks his programming. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Bloodshot, Bloodshot is kind of hard to pin down. As far as I can tell, there's been at least 3 reboots of Bloodshot. Originally, he was a former mafioso, and he was killed or damaged somehow, and he was turned into Bloodshot. There's also the version of him that is Ray, I want to say. Trying to see if I can find it real quick. It's not. There we go. Let's see. Yeah, so he was, like I said, originally he was a former crook from the mafia that was associated with the mafia. And then later he was rebooted, and Ray Garrison, there's the name I was looking for, and became Ray Garrison. Same kind of thing. He was a soldier. He was killed. They brought him back with the nanites. So it's the same every time. And even here, we don't really get to know who Bloodshot is, other than that he was... They were using these nanites to program him, to make him do what they wanted him to do. And he ends up breaking that programming and trying to figure out who he is and progress from there. So he's stronger than a normal human. He is much more durable than a normal human. And he has the kind of an affinity with technology. His nanites can take over technology. When we get to the Harbinger Wars, because we've got the addition of these mentally gifted psiots, his nanites become even more powerful. They get an upgrade in that he has defenses against mind powers. So people can't read his mind. He can't be manipulated psychically. He has the ability to kind of release an EMP pulse, but it affects people's minds, so it shuts down their powers. So we have these 4 forces, as I said. Project Rising Spirit's still in there. The Harbinger Foundation. We have the Renegades that are with Peter Stanchek, and then we have Bloodshot, who gets his own little army of psionically gifted children. Now, Bloodshot is not trying to get anything other than he's trying to get his memories back and trying to figure out who he is. So his is a little bit different form of motivation. Obviously, Toyo Harada, his is not necessarily world domination, though it is in a specific targeted way. Obviously, Peter is just trying to I shouldn't say obviously. Peter's just trying to live his life, trying to be himself, trying to deal with his powers and all that's going on with there. Now, Project Rising Spirit, again, they're a little bit iffy. They're a shadowy government organization. They are experimenting illicitly on these psionic children, on Deadshot, on other people that are contracted out to them and things like that. So there are a number of shady dealings going on with Project Rising Spirit, even though they're funded by the government. And that in itself could be a commentary on, the government itself. Anyway, I enjoyed it. The art is very good. I can't say that I really enjoyed the muddiness of the story. And there's a couple of places where it's almost like they did what you would call like a jump cut in a movie that were kind of jarring. It's like we get to the end of a story, and instead of like winding that up, we immediately jump to a new comic book, and that's kind of one of the problems with these comic books when they put them in these kind of omnibus editions, is we have this mess that we have to go through because they don't reorder the comic book pages. They just put each comic in its own spot. And so you may have a problem when you get to the end of one comic book and the comic book that comes next is technically a different story told from a different point of view, and you don't then get what happens at the end of the previous one until you read several more. And so there's, I would say it's kind of an editing thing. It could be done better, but again, if you did that, then you maybe compromise the integrity of the comics as they were originally written and produced. I don't know. Anyway, as I said, I liked the artwork. The story was okay. Editing could have been done better, in my opinion. That's it. Let me know if you've read any of these comics. If you're interested in Valiant Comics and any of their stories, let me know what you think about Bloodshot. I'm currently reading the one of the first graphic novels that Bloodshot appeared in, and so I'm getting some of that mafia backstory. And I also have on the back burner some other Bloodshot comics that are apparently the reboot after this first part, so I'll find out more about Ray and everything like that. Like I said, this ends up being the third reboot of Bloodshot, because now in the previous two installments, there were not these psionically gifted people, and now there are, and so because of that, they had to reboot Bloodshot again. Anyway, that's it for today. Like, share, subscribe, all that other stuff, and until next time, enjoy what you're reading.